We are a nation of immigrants. This country was not built by immigrants. This country was built by settlers who came here and built this country from nothing.
Are you under the impression that when the left talks about immigrants, do you think we're talking about like Christopher Columbus and his gang? Because you said that settlers came here and built this country from nothing. Let's get one thing very, very clear. Christopher Columbus and his little band of misfits were not settlers. No. They were colonizers. That's who they were. They were colonizers. And don't think I'm getting cutesy with the language. Just going by what the dictionary says. Colonizer, a nation or government that claims a territory other than its own, forcibly taking control over the population and resources located in that territory and usually sending some of its own people to settle there. See? Even the definition makes a distinction between colonizer and settler. So, if you were talking about the very infancy of the country that we call today the United States of America, no, it was not built by immigrants. You're correct. It was built by colonizers, forcibly taking things that didn't belong to them. If you're talking about the society that we know today, you're absolutely wrong. Immigrants 100% built the society that we know today. And if you think I'm wrong, go read a book.
America. Everywhere you look, we're being played. Simple as that. Check out the border. It's not just immigration. It's cartels running billion-dollar businesses while our so-called leaders play politics. They make it about left versus right, but you know what it really is, right? Right. It's families, our families, caught in the middle. Americans are paying the price while politicians and media have no interest in fixing it at all. Why is that? Because some are complicit and profiting from it. Corporations and politicians alike. You think it's some Mexican thug ring, but in reality, they're fully established in legitimate businesses fueled by their drug monies. So if you stop the drug trade, you stop the legit profits. What about healthcare? Same story. If you get sick, you don't just fight the illness, you fight the bill, don't you? A system built to bleed you dry while drug companies brag about profits. And it doesn't matter who you voted for. Everybody feels it. Let me give you a personal example. I once went to the ER while visiting my parents in Pennsylvania. I was there for 45 minutes. The bill? $8,000. $8,000. For the same money, check this out, I could actually pay for 7 years of full coverage private health insurance in Turkey. The best doctors, no wait, private hospitals, straight in. So tell me, why is that possible in a so-called third world country, but not in good old USA? I'll tell you why. Too many political campaigns and media companies profit from it. You can't kill the machine that funded the very campaign that got you elected, now can you? And the economy, well, they'll tell you the numbers look great. But numbers, they're just statistics. And you and I know the truth because we're the ones buying groceries, filling up the tank, paying rent or mortgages. Washington calls it inflation like it's some abstract thing. It's not, because for regular Americans, it's survival. Meanwhile, what's the big conversation? Billions of dollars overseas, endless meetings in Europe, endless discussions about a war we don't want or control. All while veterans who fought our wars sleep in parking lots. That's the game. Keep you distracted, keep you angry at your neighbor, keep you glued to red versus blue while the establishment laughs. But here's my point. They can't win if we stop playing. The guy across the street who votes different from you, he's not the enemy. The mom working 2 jobs to push food on her table, she's not the enemy. We've got more in common with each other than we'll ever have with the people cashing in on our division, no matter what they say. So what do? Because talking about the problem without action is just noise. This doesn't get fixed in Washington first, by the way. It gets fixed in your house, in your neighborhood, in your business, in your community first. We take care of our family first, our health, our money, our mindset, because strong families are the foundation of any strong country. We must stop letting the media program us to hate our neighbor because of a Trump or a Biden sign. Go shake a hand. Go talk face to face. You'll see real quick we've got more in common than the media and the politicians want you to ever believe. We must hold the powerful accountable. That means asking hard questions, refusing to play their division game, and speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable or dangerous. And we live with integrity. We say what we mean. We keep our word and stand on values that don't bend in the wind. If enough of us do that, if enough of us stop being spectators and start being participants, the system can break. Not by burning it down, but by starving it of what it needs most: our division, our silence, our compliance and fear. We can't wait for Washington to do it. We fix America by fixing ourselves, our homes, and our communities first. That's how we win a fight like this, guys. And make no mistake, it is a fight, but not against each other. It's against the system that's been robbing us blind. And once we stand together, there isn't a cartel, a corrupt CEO, or a crooked politician that can stop us. That's the truth, and that's where I stand. And for my non-American friends, the same goes for you and your country. Your move. What's it going to be? Follow me on Patreon for more.
I didn't know that the United States was formed by 13 British colonies. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Where was I? Where was I at school? Firstly, let's establish what a colony is. What's a colony? Colony is a region of land that's under political control by another country, with the controlling country usually far away, far away. So they set up a colony. They go and send people, say, you, go set up a colony. In this instance, the British, you, go and find some land and take over it and set up a colony.
There's a white person that says that the United States is the land of immigrants. Well, I really find that problematic, right? Because you get to realize that that's fall into the misconception or the myth that John F. Kennedy in his book, 1958 book called The Nation of Immigrants. And this book had some weakness. The first weakness was it didn't counter for African enslaved labor. Like they didn't see the works of black people, enslaved Africans who were in the United States. Two, when they go ahead and say that white people are the people that made the United States be what it is today, they fail to see indigenous dispossession that these people came and did to people who were already in these places. Remember this argument that says that Columbus came to the United States before anyone else. That's a lie, because we had this group of black people that were already here, and this has been supported by a lot of archaeological evidence that proves that black people were already in America before even the Columbus. Another weakness that this was the exploitation of immigrant labor as another talking point that I feel like this is important, right? When we get to look at the myth of nation of immigrants, and this phrase, as I've said, was popularized by John F. Kennedy's book in 1958, A Nation of Immigrant. It was misleading because it hides the foundational violence. First, I've talked about indigenous dispossession. Two, I've talked about African slavery. And three, I've talked about exploitation of immigrant labor. And so, who were the first people in the United States? White people are not indigenous to the land now called the United States. Native people lived here for thousands of years before Europeans arrived, building societies, building trade networks, agriculture, governance systems. Colonization violently displaced them through warfare, massacres, land theft, and forced removals, like the Trail of Tears. So the land itself was just empty for immigrants to settle it. It was taken, right, from black people who were already in these places. And I find this so disingenuous when people say that, black people were not indigenous to the land of the United States, where there are so many proofs that shows this. So brothers and sisters, I'm inviting you for us to have this talk, for us to have this discussion. I'm your brother, Legendary Stories, your host and also your presenter, Legendary Stories. I'm really happy to have you on my platform so that we can have and discuss about these topics. Brothers and sisters, I invite you to watch this video, right? If you're watching me for the first time, I'm just asking you to please subscribe to the channel, join the membership, and really get to see what I can offer you. And for those who are always coming back and supporting my channel, man, I'm really, really grateful for the support that you're giving me. But until then, let's watch the video. I'll be back and then I'll be sharing my thoughts in regards to this.
So let us go all the way back to 1620. 1620 is when the Mayflower, a ship set off from England in search of America. And on board was 102 passengers. Initially, two ships set off, Speedwell and the Mayflower. Speedwell, not so Speedwell, got a leak, had to turn back. And as a result of them only having one ship that worked, they crammed even more people on. So 102 passengers were on a really quite a small ship. Get on, everybody! September the 6th, 1620. Go! Go! As you would imagine, the journey was fucking horrible. It took 2 months. Everyone was crammed together. Loads of people got sick. 2 people died. Lots of people got disease. I don't want to be on that ship. Hooray, I see land. Let's go. Finally, after what was actually 66 days at sea, the Mayflower lands in what is now Massachusetts, in Cape Cod. 102, -2, the 100 passengers disembarked and they set up a little colony. They found a space in what was Plymouth Harbour. Why did they choose Plymouth Harbour? Because it had calm seas, so for boats to come and go, had freshwater river, and it had great land for crops. And then, between them, they signed what was called the Mayflower Compact. And the Mayflower Compact said these things. It said, we're loyal to the king, we're Christians, we shall be fair and just, and we will all work for the common good. And they appointed John Carver. And John Carver was voted in by 41 men. We will be just and fair and good, but no women can vote, all right? Their first winter in this little settlement, this little colony, sucked. 47 were left by the end of the winter out of the 100 that had landed. And old John Carver, who'd just been voted in, he didn't make it. So they voted in William Bradford. John Carver could have had a good run. William Bradford ended up being in charge for decades. Right, so these British colonists, they were the first people to live on this land. Of course they weren't! Native Americans lived there! What's wrong with you? In fact, 2 tribes lived there. And actually, the tribes helped these new colonists settle. And the first harvest of 1621, the English settlers, led now by William Bradford. I say, hi, William Bradford, hi, how are you? They invited the Native Americans to feast with them. And guess what? That's what we now know today as Thanksgiving. So I live in America, and I'm English, and the Americans have Thanksgiving, and I say, well, that's got to be some sort of an American holiday. And of course it's an American holiday, but I didn't realise it was initially initiated by the British and the English people who arrived here, so I should be fucking celebrating as well! While we're here, who wants to know the order of which the colonies were formed? 1607 Virginia, 1623 New Hampshire, 1626 New York, 1630 Massachusetts, 1633 Maryland, 1636 Connecticut, 1636 also Rhode Island, 1638 Delaware, 1663 North Carolina, 1663 also South Carolina, 1664 New Jersey, 1681 Pennsylvania, and all the way over in 1732 Georgia. They were the 13 colonies that were to form the United States of America when the revolution happened in 1776. You know, every time I say the American Revolution, I do this, like I'm sort of pitchforking somebody. And of course, in 1776, there was a big uprising, and I didn't even fucking realise it was an uprising of essentially English, British settlers that had become American patriots that decided they didn't want to bow to the monarchy anymore. I thought they were American people, but I suppose they were American people because they decided they didn't want to be English anymore and they'd lived and settled in America. Why didn't I know any of this? So anyway, we've done a whole thing about the revolution. In 1776, they were like, fuck this bullshit. We don't want to fucking bow down to the fucking English monarchy. This is our land. Fuck the colonies. We're going to start the United States of America. And the uprising was complete, and they drove away the English forces, and the United States of America was born.
This one's for the Southern men. Not the politicians, not the bootlickers in Washington pretending to know bourbon from Boone's Farm. No, I'm talking to the good old boys. The poor but prouds, the ones who can bait a hook and throw a punch. The ones who cry at funerals and grin through pain and tip their hats even when the world spits in their face. The ones that sound like me and look like me and were raised like me, but somewhere out here on this long stretch of American decline, you've lost the damn map. What in the holy goddamn hell happened to you? Once upon a time, a Southern man was many things, some good, some bad, but almost always real. You could hear it in the callous vowels of his draw and see it in the crack of his knuckles. He stood for something. He stood up even when the wind blew hard against him. He didn't need a flag the size of a billboard or a Facebook profile, soaked in eagles and assault rifles to prove he loved his home. He just lived it, quietly and fiercely, with a bite and a laugh. And now your heroes are Donald Trump Jr., a taxidermed mannequin in a vast pro-vest, and Eric Trump, a human gaff, J.D. Vance, who sells Appalachian grit like it's a can of soup, and Tom Cotton, a poster boy for robotic boot polishers. These are your Marlboro men? These aren't Southern men. They aren't even men in the sense my grandfather meant it. They're simpering little power fetishists in tailored camouflage, chugging masculinity supplements and playing Patriot on sound stages built by Wall Street. If these boys walked into the Queen of Clubs in Helena, Arkansas, they wouldn't make it past the jukebox. My granddaddy would have squinted at them, growled, and then beat the ever-living dog shit out of them just out of instinct. He bar fought like it was a second job, and not because he was proud of it necessarily. He actually rarely spoke of it. But because where we come from, there's a language older than words. And sometimes in a world full of liars and leeches, a fist is just shorthand for don't tread on me. He didn't fight for ego. He fought to defend the sacred ground between the front porch and the bar stool. And if you walked in greasy, smug, and full of yourself, the kind of man who'd lie to the waitress and kick a dog, he made sure you left different than you arrived. Donald Trump is just a New York greaseball with hands softer than an overripe peach and a mouth that runs like it's late to a poker game. His sons are worse. Soulless little guys dipped in deer piss and bravado. Junior, with his desperate little beard and his safari outfit, looks like a guy who tries to start fights at Little League games and calls security if it gets sideways. Eric, God bless him, is the kind of guy you'd hand a hammer and spend the next hour and a half watching him try to unscrew a nail. They're not men. They're just hair-gelled cartoons playing lumberjack. They don't work. They don't serve. They don't sacrifice. They don't build or fix or do a goddamn thing but inherit money and lie about it. And yet somehow these are the new standard by which manhood is measured. My God, how far we've fallen. They exhibit nothing, not one thing that we were raised to believe makes a man. Not courage, not humility, not grit, not loyalty, not strength of heart, or spine, or word. They sweat when it's humid, they pout when it's hard, and they run when it's dangerous. They wouldn't last 5 minutes under a tractor. They wouldn't know how to change their own oil. But don't get me wrong, I'm not saying violence is virtue or that bar fights make a man. I don't think manhood is some holy grail to be earned through broken noses. That's cheap thinking. That's the kind of thinking they sell now. Packaged rage, televised chest beating, a bunch of cosplay cowboys co-signing each other's insecurities on cable news. Manliness isn't in your fist or your flag decals. It's in the quiet things, the hard things, the true things. And these boys you worship now wouldn't last 5 minutes in the world you walk through daily. The part that turns my stomach is this. A Southern man, a real one, wouldn't stand for how these clowns behave in public, not toward his wife, not toward his daughters, not toward his children or anyone else's for that matter. He damn sure wouldn't let some orange-tinted loudmouth mock a disabled person or insult a widow, brag about assault, or spit bile at working folks just trying to get by. His mother would have slapped his mouth clean off for half the things these men say, and his grandmother wouldn't even have wasted her breath. We were raised by steel and iron women in church dresses who carried casseroles in one hand and consequences in the other, and now you fly flags with a man's name on them. You worship him like a savior, and you can say you voted for the lesser of two evils if you want, and maybe you did, but when you defend him, when you excuse him, when you wave his banner like it's a Stars and Stripes Reborn, you're not just complicit, you've already sold your soul. And I don't pretend to have the definition of manhood carved in stone. In fact, I think most definitions are too brittle and break under real pressure. But I do know what it's not. It's not inherited money and gold-plated toilets. It's not screaming on a stage while other people fight your wars and pay your debts. It's not throwing tantrums on television and calling it truth. No. A man is what he does when the storms come. A man is how he treats people who can't do a damn thing for him. A man is what he says when no one is looking, and how he loves when no one else understands. And these slick-haired frauds wouldn't recognize that man if he offered to help them jumpstart their helicopter. We're the truth tellers. The ones who called out bullshit even when it came from their own side. The ones who didn't kneel to power or party. The ones who didn't want a king, but dared to be goddamn citizens. We have never been perfect down here. God knows the South has blood in its roots and ghosts in its halls. But at least we did have some kind of honor. Raw and flawed, but ours. But now we have cowards playing cowboy and wrapping themselves in Dixie nostalgia while licking the boots of northern con men. If you told my grandfather that one day Southern men would kneel, God help us, before Yankees with gold toilets and fake tans, he'd have thought you were drunk or possessed by the devil. But here we are. Many once stared down hard times, now waiting in line to be knighted by a game show host. You've made a liar of my grandfather. He told me we don't bend, we don't cower. We speak truth even when it's costly, that you measure a man not by the flags on his truck, but by the weight of his word. We stand on dirt, not marble. That a Southern man, for his sins, never kisses the ring. And now I see you cheer for the ringmaster and beg to be shackled to him. So let me tell you this, from one of your own, from someone who still walks the same black dirt and still sings the old songs, stand up. Stop kneeling for fools. Stop praising cowards. Reclaim whatever dignity that once defined you. Not through cruelty and not through guns or flags or chants, but through truth and courage. Through the goddamn backbone that built barns and fought wars and buried family. You used to be better than this. Hell, we used to be better than this. Don't let it die with you. We're Southerners. We're unfit for crowns. We're too proud to bow and too tough to follow weak men with gold names and borrowed backbones. Let the South be known for its integrity and dignity. Let it remember what we claim to be and not what the world thinks we are. We've proven them right so goddamn often, I'm not sure we know how to prove them wrong. But for the love of God and biscuits, let's try. Define still death.
White man tell me today that America was made by vigilantes. This same white man openly admitted to me that he knows how violent the nature of his people is. He said that. He said, man, we really kill everything, right? And then he goes and says that, but this country is made by vigilantes. And I just looked at him and I said, oh, you mean the rejects? He just gave me this look like, yeah, I just said the rejects. America was made by rejects. They were made by people who could not cut it in England. That's who settled here. The fucking rejects of England. I want y'all to understand that. It's not no fucking vigilantes. They were rejects. I'm gonna talk more about this in my book in February, but don't ever think that this country was just made and established by people who were fighting against the English, the British. Nigga, fuck that. Them niggas ran. They were rejected. They couldn't cut it in England. That's why they came over here and they had to use people, black people specifically, to do work that they know they couldn't cut it to do. Lazy rejects. Period.
Immigrants. This country was not built by immigrants. This country was built by settlers who came here and built this country from nothing.
Because crossing borders is only heroic when white people do it. I hate to break it to you, Settler Dan, but your ancestors, and mine too, were the original illegal aliens. What do you call white people who cross the ocean, show up uninvited to land already inhabited by indigenous people who have lived there for thousands of years, and then destroy their cultures, their languages, their religion, and impose your own? Settlers, or rather, colonizers. And then what do you call people of color who cross the border, work jobs that nobody else wants to work, pay taxes, and try to build a life in the so-called land of opportunity? Illegals. Illegal aliens. Criminals. If you're white, it's exploration. You're a pioneer. You're a settler. And if you're not, you're an invader. And for the record, it wasn't the colonizers that built the United States. It was the immigrants that came after them from every corner of the globe. They built the railroads, the roads, the factories, the farms. They built the United States.
You know why Trump supporters don't like immigrants? They're smarter than they are. They work harder than they do. And they have ethics and values. I love my immigrant brothers and sisters. You guys do so much for this country. Thank you for all you do. And don't let these maggots wear you down. We need you. Toodles.
Of immigrants. This country was not built by immigrants. This country was built by settlers who came here and built this country from nothing.
The wealth of this country was built by enslaved black people.
Well, black people weren't immigrants, and the wealth of this country was not built by slaves. That's the honest reality. They did produce a lot of wealth for America, but all the northern states didn't have slaves. In fact, at the peak of slavery, only 3% of Americans owned slaves. Now, 25% of people owned slaves in the South. There was a civil war fought in order to free these slaves. Now, I do concede to the fact that black Americans did build the South. But once again, they're not immigrants, they're Americans.
The railroads are built by Asian immigrants.
Yeah, America's really known for its advanced railway networks. It really does not matter at all. And even those Asians, you don't descend from them, most likely, and so do most Asians in America. It's like me taking claim for what black Americans built in America. I don't descend from those people at all, actually. So it's like you claiming that is just funny.
Every time the U.S. went to war, it imported Mexican immigrants to help win the fight.
Now, the whole point of this video, the original creator's point, is that when we say America is a nation of immigrants, it's basically saying that the people who came here were coming to an already developed country. That is not the case. America is already developed. If you're an immigrant post-1960, you didn't build shit. Can we be real here? You came to an already developed country. If you did come here before 1960, especially in the 1880s, you really were coming to a land that was not developed at all. And I think that's the point. And a lot of you guys just want to say white people didn't build this country. They did build it. They wrote the Constitution. This was a white country. Now it's not. All of our laws, all of the inventions, such as the light bulb and the automobile and all these other things that developed here in the United States would not be a thing if it wasn't for these evil colonizers, and you wouldn't be living in this country at such a high standard of living if it wasn't for those people. So I have no resentment towards the white or black Americans who built this country. Obviously, nobody has resentment towards the black people for other political reasons, but you're not, once again, you're not in the same category as those.
Twisted how colonization and capitalism have wiped our collective memory, because what do you mean homelessness wasn't even a thing until the 1600s? What do you mean the origins of homelessness can be traced back to colonial America? And the best that Western leftists can do is just argue that we need affordable housing. No, you shouldn't be paying for shelter, because we weren't doing that for years until this fuck-ass country was created. The solutions aren't even solutions. They're band-aids on gash wounds. The jugular has been split open and everyone just put some ice on it. It genuinely makes me so mad, because you think we were doing that for thousands of years? The indigenous peoples of this continent, of the Americas, Africa, Australia. You think that our ancestors were paying some random bozo that has nothing to do with them every single month just to have a roof over their head? That shit is an export. Feudalism, landlords, that is a colonial export. We were not doing that since the beginning of time. If you needed a place to live, you would build a house and you would live there until you didn't. And it blows me, because it's even if you suggest, hey, no one should pay for housing because we all needed to live, people look at you like you are crazy. Like, people will fight you on that. Okay, cool, affordable housing, but that's not gonna stop the upward tick of capitalism because there's no end goal. It's just continuous extraction and exploitation and making money until infinity until we're all dead. So let's skip all that, get back to how we were living, and maybe take care of the collective. No, people will literally look at you like you're insane. This is why decolonization is the true path towards liberation, because this collective memory wipe prevents so many people from actually genuinely fighting for a completely free world. It convinces the collective that the best we can all fight for is scraps, reform, instead of getting to the root and the heart of all of these issues and destroying and dismantling all of it. Even without all this historical context, if you just simply say no one should be on the street, no one should have the power to put anyone on the street because we all need housing to survive, there will be somebody being like, actually, regardless if they're a landlord or not, because they believe in capitalism, because they have class aspirations, they believe in settler colonization, can do backflips for them, or will eventually one day. And for that, they're fighting for everyone to struggle. Like, you want to struggle. Like, what? Like, for the folks that are like, oh, we just need $300, $400 rent. Again, I understand that sentiment, but even when rent was $400 or $300, people were still homeless. People still were on the street back then. And that alone is why no one should pay for shelter. No one should pay for housing. That's the crazy answer. No one should pay for housing because we all needed to survive. But we can't have that because capitalism requires poverty to function and for people to struggle. So it can hold that over your head and be like, see, you must work unless you want to be like that. Poor people gotta exist for capitalism to keep going. And instead of everyone being like, okay, let's stop that. Let's not pay for housing. Let's not have rent. Let's get rid of landlords because that shit was not even a thing anywhere else besides Europe. You're the crazy bitch. The reason I keep hammering that European settlers built America is only because it's a completely verifiable fact that everyone knows, yet the only reason it's still brought up hundreds of years later as a talking point is they want to discredit the idea that Europeans built this place so that their descendants don't feel like they have a claim to the land. The reason they do that is they want borderless nations, so they want like a global one world government, right? So to get that, you would actually have to make it so the US had completely open borders, because once their borders were open, well, everyone else's borders are now open too, and no one has a sovereign nation because the people that created the idea of everyone having sovereign nations are the country getting destroyed from the inside. They would actually much prefer you get suckered into giving your land back, but of course it wouldn't go back to the Native Americans, it would go to the government. Except this wouldn't just be the US government, this would be the global government. So think like the UN, the WEF, all these unelected people that make all these decisions. But yeah, anyway, I don't bring it up because I don't think Native Americans have a claim to the land. Like when I say I'm native to here, I mean I was born here. I would say Native Americans are indigenous, and I'm not. I also believe this land belongs to the descendants of African Americans who have also lived here for hundreds of years. So my bringing this up has really nothing to do with me thinking this land only belongs to white people, and everything to do with the fact that I would prefer we have sovereignty, and I would prefer all the other countries have that as well, because sovereignty just means countries can do things differently. So if some countries want these laws and other countries don't, we don't all have to do the same thing. So that's the importance of that. And I think every country deserves it. So that's why I continue to tell you the truth, which is this place was completely, or almost completely, 90% settled by European Americans.
Clothing doesn't just have to be fashionable. You can wear shirts that remind people of things. And this shirt reminds people that America was built by immigrants. Get yours today. Link below.
Targeting brown people because we are native to these lands. And they've been trying to get rid of us since 1492. It's been a 500-year
occupation.
And they started with guns. They started with disease, starvation. And all our ancestors made it far enough for us to exist. They're the ones that got away. Our ancestors were warriors, healers, and they're the reasons that we're here. So when we don't claim our indigenous heritage, or we think we're not native enough, we are disregarding everything they survived. We are erasing our own identity, something that they've been trying to do for 500 years, and they try to confuse everybody by calling us Latinos, Hispanics, immigrants, foreigners, illegals. The whole time we're native, we're indigenous, we belong to these lands, we are these lands. They keep trying to erase our history, they keep trying to erase us. I feel like the only thing that could save us is if we spread the truth about who we are. And I know it sounds so simple, but they've put so much money and resources into trying to make you forget, and it's worked. We have a voice, and we have platforms, and we can spread the truth far and wide. The truth will liberate us, but it will also help save this planet. Because we are the original caretakers of the land. The land needs us to remember who we are. We need to save this planet.
News. The Trump administration questions Native Americans' birthright citizenship in court. The Trump administration argued in court to limit birthright citizenship for certain groups of people here in the United States. Part of their argument involved questioning whether Native Americans, who are citizens of their own tribal nations, qualified for U.S. citizenship under the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, which was ratified in 1868, states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are United States citizens. This basically means that anyone born on U.S. soil automatically is a United States citizen. However, the Trump administration is focused on one phrase of the 14th Amendment, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And they argue that not everyone born in the United States qualifies as subjects to the jurisdiction of the United States. The Justice Department cited the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which was ratified 2 years prior to the 14th Amendment, and is one of the earliest laws that defines citizenship. What's interesting about this is that it excludes two groups of people from citizenship. The first is subjects to a foreign power and Indians not taxed. Historically, the United States government treated all Native Americans as belonging to separate nations and not to the United States. And that all changed in 1924 with the passage of the Indian Citizenship Act, which granted all Native Americans in the United States citizenship. The Trump administration is arguing that the 14th Amendment should still exclude Native Americans because we are still subjects to a foreign power, which is our tribal nations, and they are citing a Supreme Court case that was decided in 1884 that stated that Native Americans are not U.S. citizens unless they denounce their allegiance to their tribes. This is very controversial because the United States government and tribal nations have a long-standing agreement stating that Native Americans can have dual citizenship with the United States government and with our tribes. And the arguments that the Trump administration is trying to make will undermine all of this and throw away hundreds of years of treaties and negotiations that allow us to have our tribal sovereignty today. In addition to that, the 1884 Supreme Court case that decided that Native Americans are not U.S. citizens unless they renounce their tribal allegiance was basically deemed useless after the passage of the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924.
No, I want an answer to that because that's your slogan, make America great again. When was America great for you?
Okay, that is, American great is our freedom.
Freedom, your freedom? Or all of our freedom?
Everybody's freedom.
Everybody's freedom. So yes. When was America great for all of us?
When our forefathers.
Forefathers, the ones that own people?
No.
Which ones?
You have to look at the history. You got to look at the history.
I am. I'm asking you. Which four? George Washington owned 300 people and went after a few of them for running away. They signed a constitution that made black people, enslaved black people, 3/5 of a human being. I don't think it was great then. If you're asking me, a black woman.
Right, but you have to understand
what
our history to get where we are today. What's happening is our media.
No, Jackie, because again, if you can't walk me through the greatness of America and how you want to restore it to a place where it was great before, your whole argument falls apart. So walk me through when America was great.
Okay, so America has been great forever. Now the problem is the people.
For who though? No, I can't wait because you need to answer the question. And again, you call up, and I'm glad, Mississippi. I love the state. You're a Trump supporter, which I want to get into the reasons behind that. But it's all around this freedom thing and this greatness thing, and we need to settle on what that looks like for you, and for me, and then for all of us. Because if it's not going to be great for all of us, then it's not great for any of us, Jackie.
Well, my question is, why don't you think it's great? Because I've grown up, and no. You answer my question first, please. Okay, so you're asking me when it was great. It's been great. It has been great.
It has been great. So slavery was great. Trail of Tears was great. The Chinese Exclusion Act, great. The Japanese internment, great. That was great. Jim Crow was great. Back of the bus, colors only water fountains. Let me see. Brown versus Board of Ed. Oh, the throwing of tomatoes at little girls. The bombing of a church with little girls in it. That was great. The hanging of hundreds and thousands of black people, burning down towns in the 1920s. The draft riots in New York because of people having to fight for freedom. Liberty is everything, right? Liberty is everything. That was a great America to you?
Okay.
You can't just say, was it great or not?
It's people that make it bad.
People make it bad. Yes, racist people, horrible people, genocidal people make it bad. You're absolutely right.
I'm still having a problem with this myth of United States as a nation of immigrants, because America was built on enslaved labor. Africans who were taken outside Africa to the United States, They were not immigrants. These are people who are pushed to these places. Immigrants are people who come to the United States. They come willingly, first to look for pastures, to look for greener pastures, right? So when they come to look for greener pastures in the United States, we call them immigrants. For example, we have Asians, we have some Africans today, we have Latinos, right? All these Miami Cubans that we see today, we put them under one category and we call them immigrants. But African enslaved people were not immigrants. These were people who were enslaved. They were kidnapped and brought here against their will to provide free labor for over 400 damn years, right? Then slavery was the backbone of the U.S. economy, especially in agriculture. Talk about cotton, talk about sugar, talk about tobacco, right? Which powered not only America's growth, but also global trade. The White House, the Capitol, the Wall Street, and many U.S. cities were literally built by enslaved Africans. To say the country was built by immigrants erases their first contribution. And so I really find that problematic. And if you think that you have facts against what I'm saying, please come to the comment section and let's have a chat. Let's talk about this, brothers and sisters, because this, what I'm saying, it is the truth. You can go check it out. It is out there. We can't call all these works that black people did, enslaved Africans did, we can't call that immigrant labor. This was unenforced labor. We're talking about racial capitalism in these places because we have the Wall Street, we have the Capitol, we have all these places that grew as a result of enforced labor that came from black people, for you to understand this concept. Immigrants, yes, did contribute, but under harsh conditions. Later on, after time, Irish, Italians, Chinese, Mexicans, all this group also played a huge roles, working on railroads, mines, factories, and farms. But their experiences were not the same as Africans who were enslaved or Native Americans whose land was stolen. When you talk about Native Americans, you're talking about black people, right? People who are native to the land because they find the land when it was empty even before the Columbus came, right? So many immigrants faced exploitation. They faced racism, which is still happening until today, and violence. Yet they are still contributed to the physical and industrial building of the country, right? And so this dejustifies. It dejustifies what John F. Kennedy in his book 1958, The Nation of Immigrants, that he wrote, which was talking about that dejustifies that. And so, brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think and what you feel about this. Let's talk about white paternalism versus reality. Many white Americans cling to the idea that they built the country, right? As if their ancestors alone carved a nation out of nothing. But in reality, the wealth, the infrastructure, and the global power of the U.S. was created through, first, stolen indigenous land, 2, enslaved African labor, 3, exploited immigrant workforce. And now that explains to you, white elites managed and benefited from this structure, but they did not do the hardest, dirtiest, most threatening labor themselves. So, to answer the question that this person is saying, no, the U.S. was not built by immigrants alone. It was built on the foundation of genocide, on the foundation of slavery and exploitation with contributions from indigenous people, enslaved Africans, and later immigrant groups. And so, this is how it goes, and we all need to understand. And I can just come and talk about this. I came with some facts about why do I think that there was a presence of African people in the United States before Columbus, evidence of pre-Columbian African presence, right? Now, the mainstream history view tells us something different, and it tells us that Mr. Columbus is the one who came. Mr. Columbus is the one who came and discovered the United States. He was the first person to set his feet. But when he was going in these places, Africans, black people who had the technology of moving the ships to the United States were already in these places. These were people with the spirit of adventure. They left their places and found this land empty. And they got into this land, right? We have Olmec civilization, that's which was in 200 BCE to 400 BCE. The famous colossal stones heads resemble distinctly African features. That's broad noses, full lips, and some scholars argue they point contact between West Africans and early Mesoamerican people. Look at the works of Dr. Ivan Satima, Africans before Columbus, right? Africans were in the United States before Columbus. Let's talk about Malian voyages. Historical accounts from Mali describes Emperor Abubakar II, who supposedly sailed west with hundreds of ships, never to return. Some historians believe they may have reached the Americas centuries before Columbus. That's also another proof that shows you. Spanish and Portuguese records. Early European explorers themselves sometimes wrote about encountering dark people in the Americas who resembled Africans, right? So, doesn't that make sense to you? They themselves, the explorers, confirmed that they already found the presence of Africans, the presence of black people in the United States. And so that answers you what we're talking about. So you might ask yourself, why is this history usually suppressed, or why do we have a revisionist story in regards to this? If it's acknowledged that Africans were here before the Columbus, it disrupts the narrative that America was discovered and civilized by European. It also gives black people a deeper indigenous claim to the land, which threatens the white settler foundation of U.S. history. So brothers and sisters, please let me know what you think about this. I'm your host and presenter, Agentic Stories, but until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.